because this is what motivates or otherwise drives our client to adhere to the right kind of diet when in diabetes. Because to tell them, we need to understand what exactly is happening in diabetes patient's body. So many people are of the opinion that okay, my sugars are this much and I am taking this much of medicine. If I eat one sweet, I increase the dose, so the sugar gets balanced. So that particular attitude is very dangerous, because the sugar, whatever excess sugar that is there in our body, the balance, if it is lost, it leads to so many complications, and the main complication being microangiopathy. See, micro is small, angio is like blood vessel, pathy is like a disease. Small blood vessel disease. What exactly is happening here? So we know that blood flows from big arteries, from there arterioles, small arterioles, and finally they divide into capillaries, right? And again they form venules. They form venules and veins, small veins, and ultimately into larger veins. This is how blood moves about in our body. See, this is where actually, this is the area where inside a tissue the circulation, the perfusion happens. Perfusion happens, and this is where the nutrient exchange happens. If you look at the structure of a capillary, right? Let's say this is a basement membrane, and we have these loosely connected endothelial cells covering this capillary. Okay, so these capillaries, they get damaged in diabetes. What is the process? And these organs, when the organs primarily affected in diabetes are one, okay, we will come to that later. So first, if there is excess glucose, right, moving about in our body, what is happening to the blood vessel? First of all, the endothelial cells, imagine this to be a tube, okay. So the inside layer of the blood vessel, it is lined by endothelial cells, and they are facing the toxicity of this excess glucose concentration. So first thing that happens is, let's take a bottle of water and add 1 spoon of sugar to it. So you don't see much difference in its viscosity or the effect of that sugar in the bottle. But imagine you add 1/4 kg of sugar into it and mix it and try to see. So the water will not move that much freely. So the viscosity of the blood improves and the movement of the blood is sluggish. It will be slowly moving. Second one, these blood vessels, they get affected in the capillaries. We call this as microangiopathy. What is it causing? I mean, what is that molecule that is causing this microangiopathy inside a blood vessel, right? So there is a process called glycation. What is glycation? Non-enzymatic reaction of a glucose molecule with any kind of protein or lipid. Predominantly this is protein. This is non-enzymatic. This is very important. This is non-enzymatic. Why is this so important, non-enzymatic? Because for every reaction that happens in our body, there is an enzyme that is facilitating that reaction. Say for example, A plus B gives rise to C plus D. There is an enzyme acting on here. Okay, so this is like, there is no enzyme. Glucose molecules are coming and attaching to this protein molecules, and this process is called glycation, right? So we all know the test called HbA1c. What is this? HbA1c. So what is this HbA1c? HbA1c stands for glycated hemoglobin. That means the excess sugar, right, because it crossed its normal level, is like attacking the hemoglobin or attaching to the hemoglobin molecule, and we are measuring this HbA1c to understand the level of sugar that is maintained. So glycation leads to what? It leads to formation of glycation end products. They are called advanced glycation end products. Right? So AGE, advanced glycation end products, formation of advanced glycation end products. So these are toxic to the body. These are toxic to the body. Body cannot read what do they mean, because this is an abnormality. This is an abnormal product. Now, if we look at this endothelium, the capillary, right? We have these endothelial cells, flat endothelial cells. They are just like a tiles, okay, covering this tube. So these advanced AGE products, they come and interact with endothelium. For endothelium, this is toxic. It doesn't know what to do with this, right? So this endothelium faces this inflammation, goes through an inflammatory process. One of the protective mechanisms is the endothelial cells, they shrink in size. So the normal endothelial cells, they become leaky, right? They become leaky. Now they may become small and distorted. Now there is gap in between. So the fluid that is there inside, whatever plasma that is there, it leaks into the basement membrane. And here you have the basement membrane. Okay, and remember, with excess glucose, we are creating a toxic situation by making the proteins into advanced glycated end products, and these are acting on the endothelial cells, and they shrink, and there are gaps between endothelial cells. So the integrity is lost. The fluid is no longer in the tube, so it is coming out. But we are doing a damage here. But the body is trying to protect itself. How is it trying to protect this? Whatever basement membrane, it increases in thickness. So as to prevent it. Right? So this particular basement membrane will not let this thing happen. Now, the capillaries are only one cell wall thick tubules. Look at this. Let's say this is a capillary. Okay, like this is a tube, and this is lined by endothelial cells, like this. Okay. Now around that, what do you have? We have this basement membrane. We have this what? The basement membrane. Okay. Now it is losing its elasticity. Got it? So the blood, while moving, the pressure inside the vessel, it goes up. Now from capillary, you come down and go up either side, veins or arteries. So the arterioles and the arteries, the vessel wall becomes thick. So when the blood vessel wall becomes thick, right? We already discussed in cardiovascular system and in hypertension class that what is blood pressure? The pressure exerted by the blood on lateral walls of the blood vessel is called BP. Now since Because of diabetes, all the small vessels, they are becoming thick and the endothelium is getting damaged. So first thing that happens because of this microangiopathy or a period of time that develops is hypertension, right, or increased arterial pressure in different organs. If the organ is sensitive enough, just like a retina or a kidney, where minute changes in pressure matters a lot, what happens there is, because of this increased pressure, excuse me, because of this increased pressure, what happens is the organ suffers a lot. So it goes into a protective mode by increasing the basement membrane and damage to the stromal or parenchymal cells. Now, why is this important? Why we need to understand? So there are two things that are happening here. One is like AG is increased pressure in the vessels and increased inflammation. This increased inflammation, to fight this, this inflammation results in increased production of ROS. What are they? Reactive oxygen species, also known as free radicals. So look at the process. Increased sugar in our blood. We think that, at least the patients think that it is not a big deal. Is it not? They think that slight increase in sugar level is not going to harm me anyway. But it leads to advanced glycation end products. So increased pressure or obliteration or distortion of small vessels, and this leads to inflammation of endothelial cells, and this leads to reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species, what do they do? What do they do is, see, this is a blood vessel and this is your LDL molecule. It's a big molecule. It is carrying it's carrying cholesterol, right? As long as LDL is moving in the blood, there is no problem, right? So, but when LDL is oxidized, how it gets oxidized? Because of these free radicals. These free radicals, they come and attack this LDL. Okay. Now, they are stuck. They have fallen onto the surface of the blood vessel. Now, to cover this, macrophages will come and engulf them. What are they? Macrophages. Macrophage will come and consume this oxidized LDL. Now, it is no more a moving or mobile. This is like oxidized LDL, and this whole cell becomes a foam cell, right? And to cover that, the endothelial layer will move on top of it. Now, what is happening to this lumen? In this lumen, the blood is moving earlier very freely. Now there is an obstruction, so it has to move in this direction. If that happens on an ongoing basis without any control, what happens is the fat, the LDL gets accumulated in the blood vessel, and on top of that, the muscle in small blood vessels, the muscle will come on top of that and cover it off, and on top of that you have this endothelial layer. Now, what happened to the lumen? If you look at the lumen here, there is a block. So, formation of echiroma or fat depositions called fat plaques. Right? Look at the cascading events here. Look at the cascading here. Increased sugar level causes microangiopathy. Right? What is microangiopathy? In small vessels, the sugar reacts with protein forms advanced glycation end products, and thus increases pressure or distortion of small blood vessels, and this causes inflammation of the underlying endothelial cells, which results in formation of reactive oxygen species or free radicals. These free radicals result in formation of atheroma. This is an ongoing process. This is an ongoing process. Now, we can broadly, I hope this is clear. Please go through the complete process of the toxicity in hyperglycemic state, or the toxicity because of excess sugar. Now, if we can divide this long-term complications into microvascular pathologies and macrovascular pathologies. So, in microvascular pathologies, the first one is retina. We call this as retinopathy. Right? So, retina is a very sensitive organ, very thin layer. The blood vessels in that, the small capillaries, what happens to them is they become thick. There is like hemorrhages, and again to control that the exudates, all these things they form. In effect, it leads to blindness. And the AGE products, advanced glycated end products, they are the reason for aging. Okay, how people grow old. So advanced glycated end products are developing in each and every individual. They are there. See, the sign of aging, we see wrinkles in face and body becomes saggy over a period of time. It's all because of aging. But in diabetics, what is happening? The aging process is accelerated because of AGE products. Okay, so retinopathy, and this also may cause cataract. Okay, the next one is nephropathy. Okay, so the small blood vessels in kidney, they get damaged over a period of time, and it leads to what? Chronic renal failure. What is chronic renal failure? What is failure? If any body organ fails to do its job, it is called a failure. Okay, so cardiac myocardial infarction is not a failure, right? It is not getting sufficient oxygen. But cardiac failure is a failure of heart. So that anyway we will discuss later. Renal failure, what is the function of kidney? The function of kidney is to filter blood, right? So that means substances like urea and creatinine are supposed to be excreted by kidney. When in diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes, because of microangiopathy, the kidney structure is getting damaged. So most of the kidney is getting damaged and it's not doing its job. This leads to nephropathy. And second one is polyneuropathy, or simply neuropathy. So in neuropathy, the myelin sheaths, if you look at an axon, this is an axon, and let's say so this is a neuron and this is an axon. So this is the peripheral nerve. On top of that, what do we have? We have this, what do you call? Strand cells, myelin sheath on either side. Okay, consider this, this is the nerve ending. Okay, it can either bring in a sensation is taking in, or in another nerve, it is sending a signal. So, an effector neuron, okay, or motor function, whatever. Okay, so the covering around this axon is called myelin sheath. This works like an insulin for an electric copper wire or conducting wire. So when this is lost, there is conduction defect. So the advanced glycation end products, they damage this myelin sheath in a nerve. This leads to neuropathy. What happens because of this? Two things that will happen. What are they? Loss of sensation. Loss of sensation. And loss of motor function. That is muscular weakness. They don't have that energy to, like a normal individual, to perform everyday activities. But if this neuropathy, right, this is peripheral neuropathy. If this happens to autonomic system, that is called autonomic neuropathy. What does it mean? Autonomic nervous system supplies the visceral organs. Say for example, when we take food, right, brain has to send a signal to our stomach to contract and relax, to churn the food, to break down the food. Now, in uncontrolled cases of diabetes, the AGE, they damage the autonomous nerves that are supplying what? Supplying our stomach. So these nerves are damaged. That means what? This leads to a condition called gastroparesis. Paresis is weakness or inability. Okay, the stomach cannot do its job for a period of time, and this further leads to GERD and indigestion, fullness, bloating. There are so many problems, and altered bowel movements. Altered bowel movements. And finally, we have the last one, that is foot disease. Right? The foot disease. So 2 or 3 things are happening in when we talk about foot. Okay. So this is an individual. Right? This is the foot. Now, the heart is pumping blood from here. From here it is coming through aorta and going into both the legs, and finally it is coming, and here it is divided into small capillaries. Okay. Now, for any organ to sustain, what does it require? This is a cell. It requires 2 things. One is like it requires oxygen and it requires glucose. Okay. Then only the cell can survive. If the terminal branches of arteries are occluded, there is no enough oxygen that is reaching that particular area. Okay. That is happening because of, again, our advanced glycated end products. So on top of that, glucose is also on top of that. Okay, coming to the next one, the sensations. If there is an injury here, if there is an injury here, this message is not going through spinal cord, through our brain. First there was an injury and we don't know there was an injury, and on top of that, because of this microangiopathy, this area is not getting enough oxygen and glucose is abundantly available there. When there is an injury, the infection, the bacteria or whatever that goes inside, it finds a lot of sugar, fuel. So the infection grows at such a faster rate, because since the vessels are occluded and they are not being perfused, that means blood supply is not proper, means what? They are not able to fight the infection effectively. So this leads to what? A gangrene, necrosis of that area. So the doctors, they don't have any other option but to amputate the leg. Okay, so these are all the microvascular complications of diabetes. Okay. Now, what are the macrovascular? So this is all happening at a micro level. Microangiopathy leads to all these conditions. These are all complications. And at macro level, what happens? See, heart is a 4-chambered muscular organ which pumps blood. Okay. So heart also needs its own supply of blood vessels. Okay. So 3 main blood vessels supply blood to the heart. Right, left and anterior descending. Left circumflex and anterior descending. Now, if the atheroma forms inside this particular vessel, you'll see if this is the blood vessel, there is this occlusion, formation of atheroma, and it is not getting, so the lumen is narrow. So the area supplied by this particular block, this particular vessel, it is not getting sufficient oxygen. So this area will not get enough oxygen. So they die immediately because they are highly metabolically active cells, cardiac cells. So this is called myocardial infarction or simply heart attack. This is a macrovascular complication. If this is happening to the peripheral vessels, say for example, if atheroma is forming in all blood vessels, why it only affecting heart? It is affecting heart because the heart is very essential. The same atheroma is there in all the blood vessels, but here the effect is immediately felt. Okay, because it has to function 24/7 and non-stop. Okay, it cannot take a break. The same thing if it is happening peripheral vessels, maybe leg vessels. So that leads to what is known as claudication. And the same kind of atheromatous events happen in brain. This may lead to transient ischemic attack. We'll discuss this when we discuss in CNS. Or it may lead to stroke. Okay. Now, why we need to understand this? The reason is very simple. Right? Patients, they think that diabetes is all about managing only sugar. So, if we don't educate them, this is the pathway for you. Okay? But by right kind of diet, we can almost nullify most of them. We can prevent, by maintaining normal glucose level, we can prevent all these events. Right? So the importance of maintaining normal glucose can be impressed upon on our clients, provided first of all we know what is happening in a diabetes patient. Okay? So with this, we completed long-term complications as well. Now we try to understand the next topic, that what doctors are doing to management through medication. And lastly, we see dietary approaches. Right?